All right, everybody, welcome back to The Blind Spot. And today I have with me Heather Case Hall, a very, very, very talented cybersecurity professional that I've had the pleasure to meet recently. Heather is the author of the book Data in Plain Sight. She's a 22-year veteran of the U.S. Army, and from what I understand, is one of the first cybersecurity warrant officers, which I'm definitely just going to let Heather introduce and talk about. And I know Heather and I share a similar background with a list of certifications a mile long. So I can't wait to hear the story about that. And Heather, why don't you give us a little bit more details about yourself, talk a little bit about your book, and we'll go from there.
Sure, sure. First of all, the thing you mentioned, the cybersecurity warrant officer. For those of you that are not familiar, warrant officers in the United States Army are technical experts in their field. And there were less than 100 when I was able to attend that school with 11 SANS classes and 7 challenges. And I was able to pass all 7 of those challenges, and if anyone doesn't know what that means I was certified in that area. Um, and I'm also a twin mom. I have identical twin girls and a son that is amazing. Um, I live in the Nevada area, not Las Vegas, Carson City, the home of mountain and trees. So I'm not a gambler, more of a hiker. What more can I tell you about myself, Jason?
Yeah, no, I love that. I like the plug about Nevada because I think everyone hears Nevada and they're just thinking,
Las
gold
Vegas.
coins and money and gambling. So,
Exactly, exactly.
and I heard recently that you actually just received an award for Woman Cybersecurity Leader of the Year from the UCA. Is that correct? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes, yes. So, somewhere along the line, someone nominated me to be the Cybersecurity Woman Leader of the Year. There were 7,000 women applicants submitted for that category. And somehow or another, I managed to be standing in Liechtenstein and receive that award. And for those of you that don't know where Liechtenstein is, it's next to Austria in the Swiss Alps. And it is a small but mighty country. I challenge you to look it up. It's a very interesting place.
See, I think I was undersold on the heftiness of that. To be out of 7,000 to actually receive that award. Based on what I know about you so far and how you and I have talked, I can definitely see how it's warranted. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, my new friend. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So today, I want to talk about, let's say, who can reach what, right? Between data, identity, and the agents nobody governs. And before we get into that, let's talk about your book for a second. And I want you to define for our readers, listeners, what is data classification to you, and talk a little bit about the pillars of your book.
Yeah. So data in plain sight really came about helping my clients understand how to secure their data. Quite a few of the clients were delving into the purchase of very expensive data security posture management tools. Some of them had even gone multiple rounds with multiple different vendors and still were finding themselves at the same place, not understanding their data, not
Yep.
understanding how to secure it and why it really mattered. So I just started writing. I got about 150 pages into policies, procedures, my thoughts, all of the brain dump. And I put the best coworker I've had to date to use, ChatGPT. And quite literally, ChatGPT said in the first line, Heather, you have a book. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, I guess we're going here.
I
Um,
love it.
yeah. So one thing led to another. I self-published, self-edited, self-imprinted, all of those things. Wouldn't recommend it, but if you need to, I'll happy to guide you, Jason.
No, I love it. I told you before, I wanted to be an author. I think I'm gonna go more for the, lit RPG fantasy series for those that know me and know that's my favorite genre, but, between you and another friend of mine who just recently published, Antonio, yeah, I'm gonna take all the help I can get. I've heard from both of you that that's not a fun process, so I'm gonna take you up on that.
Let's do it. Let's dig into it. Um, you asked about the pillars of the book.
Yeah,
Quite literally, the premise of the book is how do we secure ourselves from AI? And I'm really equating AI to what I know from the military background, which is the force, the soldiers, the attackers that we really don't know where they're at, where they're coming from, and understanding how we can secure the data, make sure the identity and access has been secured, and really govern the use of AI and help with that, securing, again, the force that we don't know that might attack us.
yeah. Yeah, I bet, you have some interesting, opinions on the ChatGPT and Hugging Face incident,
Oh, yeah. Very,
from
very.
last week, so I may dive into that towards the end because I think with your military background and, your book topic, I think I'd be doing my listeners a disservice by not asking you about that, um, so we're gonna go into that. Okay, so let me see, where do I wanna start? So, do you think do you think data classification or what we just talked about on the intro, do you think this was a knowledge problem? And um, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, right? Data classification has been on every assessment that I've been a part of for the last 2 decades, right? And why do you think it's been so consistently ignored?
I think it's been not necessarily, I wouldn't say ignored, I think secured in a different manner.
Okay.
So I think we've been building the castle analogy, the moats, the
Hmm.
field, the walls, the guards, all of those various different things. And we've been doing a great job at that. We've really trained the people that live inside the castle, our users, how to not respond to phishing emails and vishing and all of those ishing things. But now we're defending against the horse that one, we can't see, two, we can't stop, and three is really sort of wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
And when we go to stop it from wreaking havoc, our own processes say no, if you want to loop that back to Hugging Face. Um, so it's just right now we're at the height of a technology boom, change, morph. And from my perspective, if we don't secure the data itself, then businesses will not be able to sustain themselves.
Yeah. Um, so as somebody who goes into a client environment, how many of your clients can actually tell you like where their sensitive data lives? We talked about the walls and the moat and all of that, but who these days knows where their data is? What are some of the biggest surprises that you've seen when you're asking about the data and trying to classify it and do it and doing all of that? What's your thoughts there?
Jason, I have had no less than 200 conversations over the last 2 years about data.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say probably 50% of the people that I talk to are pretty confident of where their data is.
Okay,
And
that's a little higher than I thought it was.
um, every single one of those individuals finds themselves wrong.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. I was gonna say, I was like, wow, that's a higher stat than I ran into, but okay, I see where that went.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're pretty confident. They think they know where the data is. And then we launch a data security posture management tool, DSPM tool at their environments. And there is a moment where there's a lot of curse words, a lot of pauses,
Yeah.
or silence because they really don't know what to do next. And that is where I'm hoping the book helps.
Yep.
Um, the what to do next. I just got off a call this morning with a client that was like, "Oh my goodness, we need to fix this right now." And I said, "My friends, pause for a second. We just looked at 5% of your data
Yeah.
because we were doing a POC. And if you start trying to fix just this small percentage, this is years of work just for 5%. So I want you to start taking notes, two sets of notes. One, the things that you need to fix right now, and
Mhm.
two, how you think you're going to get ahead of this for your entire environment. That's all I
Yeah.
want you to. Let's take notes.
Yeah.
What about you?
Um, so that's pretty funny. I think um, I just go back to some old like DSPM, DLP days as that whole thing went around in circles, and a lot of us who've been in the industry, um, we got a little desensitized. Like we all knew DLP, was a thing, and DSPM was a thing, and understanding the data. But some of these legacy tools, when we ran them, had so many alerts and mountains of data and the false positives, and you realize right away like the sheer scale like that you need for data management, data classification. Do you think that's why this never got funded, or in your experience, like where has this gone, and why haven't organizations really planned for funding this, and they find out by bringing someone like you in, and then they find out the hard way or the panicky way?
Yeah, I think that the funding has really come from the board level. Boards are pushing this. And boards are pushing this not necessarily because they understand the problem, but because they're seeing headline news.
Yep.
Um, we I can sympathize with you. I completely understand the DLP plight. I was in charge of DLP at a financial insurance institution that I worked at. And I will tell you that it's a very powerful tool. I will also tell you that Social Security numbers and targets, shelf itemization are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So to use regex and pattern matching, which is where most DLP lies, even the modern DLP is regex and pattern matching. You're going to get false positives because what if somebody scans a picture of an item they purchased at Target? And now
Right.
you've got something triggering as a social security number and you've got to go act upon it. Mind you, it's just one. Most companies would never, but that's also obviously an extreme example. But me myself, I have blue screened an entire organization with a comma placement in DLP.
Oh yeah.
It it was one
Oh
of my
jeez.
employees, but I'm gonna claim fault here,
Yeah.
you know? And it was a big deal. So DLP is a very powerful tool, and without AI supporting it or having it interact with classification that you've done intentionally, it becomes very scary.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get into that in a second, but it sounds like you're a proponent of leveraging AI to assist in the data
Yeah.
classification. Am I assuming? Is that correct?
Yes,
What
yes,
are your thoughts?
I am, and the reason being is because, regex and patterns don't find context.
Hmm.
And the context is the key. I love this example. I've probably said it 20,000 times, exaggeration. Um, when I say the term Jordan, what do you think?
Well, to me, it's actually Robert Jordan, The Wheel of Time, because I'm such a fantasy book person. But
I
you could
love
talk
that.
about shoes.
You could talk about shoes, intellectual property.
Yeah. Yep.
You could talk about Michael, which
Yep.
is PII. You could also
Yep.
talk about Jordan the River, which is GDPR. So all of those things without the context around what it's talking about could trigger various different levels of concern.
Okay. All right, so context, right? We know that, AI and context, that has to be a thing. You can't just point it at something raw and then tell it to do something. Actually, I think I released a blog article this morning where I kind of said that is if you push a bunch of data from a bunch of organizations to AI, you're going to get the average that it's been fed amongst everyone, and it has no context on the individual organization. So um, you might get this really nice looking assurance coming out of an AI tool, but without that context, you could be putting yourself in some serious jeopardy. Um, so I've seen that, and it sounds like your background is saying that the context on data classification is something that is necessary to do and at scale. Is that right on the scale side?
Yeah, I feel that if you're gonna do it
Yeah,
all the way.
yeah,
You need to be covering every single storage area you possibly can as we're moving some organizations just moving to Windows 11 and really looking at making your storage area as a OneDrive as opposed to a local storage area. Scanning those, understanding where your users have tried to help themselves be better by, I don't know, copying a database and putting it in Excel on their storage in their computers and then manipulating that data to make informed decisions. So as
yeah,
that data morphs and changes, at some point you sort of lose the context of the data. So you've got to really make sure that the data that businesses are making decisions off of is
yeah,
true and it's sound.
yeah. Um, Okay, so you mentioned OneDrive and things like that, and migrations for um, Microsoft users. Talking about like a day one of a Copilot deployment, right? Just as an example. And this environment was never classified, never had an access review. What surfaces? What are some of the gotchas and surprises that you've seen that we can expect the listeners to run into?
Um, well, first of all, I don't think Copilot's gonna sound the alarms when it finds something fun. It's not its intended
Yeah,
use case. But if you were to launch it in your entire environment, think of every dirty sock that you've got left laying around. Um, think of something digging through your closet and finding that holy t-shirt that you just don't want to part with.
yeah,
Um, or even better, how about the wedding dress that now is no longer sacred? It's being shared with the world and being copied and mimicked. To the husbands out there, they could probably care less, but the wife, she's going to care a lot that someone is copying her wedding dress.
yeah,
Uh, so if we use that sort of analogy, the end user may not care too much, but the board is going to care a lot
yeah.
because their intellectual property, um, their financial information. Uh, Back in the day of DLP, I had a very large organization that I was working with that really only cared about one thing walking out the door. Curious
Oh,
if you could guess
oh,
that.
I've heard some doozies. I don't even want to guess. So,
I'll just
what?
tell you, it
Yeah.
was salaries and compensations of their executives.
Oh, of all the things to worry about. I see.
That's all they cared about.
Yeah.
And we focused our entire effort around that one thing. Nowadays, that one thing's probably the least of your worries.
Right. I mean, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I think that stuff should be transparent anyway. But that's a personal opinion. So, um,
You
all right,
know
that's
how you said
interesting.
you and I are very much alike? Cheers to that, my friend.
Yeah,
Cheers.
yeah. It's just I'm a huge fan of transparency, but at the same time, I'm also a cybersecurity professional, so keeping things to myself and secrecy and things like that is just it's also in my nature. It's kind of like a yin and yang type of thing. So I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Um, you said something interesting about uh the board driving. You actually said it twice. The board driving a lot of the data classification, a lot of the data projects. Um, is that who your buyer is, or is that the charter developer of the project? And then, right, like where do boards really sit in the start of the project or the funding? Or just kind of talk to me about what you're seeing here. Because you said it twice. I think that's pretty interesting.
So what I am seeing as I'm having conversations with CISOs, CTOs, CIOs, the various different levels, quite a lot is mentioned. The board asked us to do this. The board wants us to investigate this. The board is funding this. I need to go
Yeah.
ask the board to do this, which is great. And another reason why I wrote the book, because the board is paying the bill, but now it the board is funding
Yep.
the $1 million tool that is going to find this classification. And mind you, that $1 million tool, that price amount is for a very, very large organization with way too much data. Um, and then that same organization is pausing on leveraging the tool to clean up the environment, to make
Mm.
changes to the environment without going back to the board and asking for permission to use the tool that they paid for.
Kind of like a knee jerk reaction on initial discovery.
Yeah, yeah. So let's say you inherited a Lamborghini, but to drive the Lamborghini, you have to go ask permission for the keys.
Hmm.
You have to ask for permission for where you're driving it. You need to ask permission for the gas. That is what's happening. And the problem with that is not the transparency between the board and the doers, the CISO, the security experts. The problem is that the board already made a decision to fund it, and now it is taking months for that to get the keys. It's
Mm.
taking months to get the gas. It's so in an organization that spent $2 million for a year's utilization of a data security posture management tool, it took them 3 months to get permission to add classification, to add MIP labels, the
Wow.
Microsoft labels.
Yeah.
So,
Was that permission, or was it like a GRC team with the labels, all of the above? Like where was that delay at?
I don't have the full understanding. What I was told is the board. So
I
it was
see.
probably more so where you were stating things, Jason. It was probably the GRC. It was probably this. It was probably that. Um, the major concern was the upheaval and the change of processes for the users.
Yep.
They were
Yep.
concerned that the MIP labeling would affect the users.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that would be a genuine fear, especially at scale. I wouldn't want to rock the boat, especially when that means potential revenue loss or the productivity loss, which is still revenue loss. So yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
And I think that comes down to user awareness,
Hmm.
trait. So if you opened a file today and saw that it was labeled as restricted, how much thought would you give to it?
If well, me personally,
Well,
I'm trained on that, so I probably would avoid it, but
yeah, yeah.
not the
Um,
average user.
the average user, probably if they opened a file that was marked restricted, they'd be like, okay, moving
Right.
on, still use the data, still going to do my job.
Yep.
But that comes down to training. Like, let's send out an email. Add that training to our everyday security awareness training and move on. Don't take 3 months to
Yeah.
make that decision.
Yeah.
But that goes back to what I was talking about originally. Don't do anything. Make a list and figure out what you're going to do before you purchase the tool.
Yeah. Well, I wish people spent more time on the planning, and you know what? If I could, for the listeners, if I could say from an executive standpoint, the one thing I wish I would see, and I think you're framing around this as well, is um, like plan, right? You can't build a plane as you're flying, especially in this particular category. Or I think you're going to get seriously hurt or seriously exposed, which I guess is is a kind of hurt. Or at the other one, you're just going to have this long, drawn out project that's just going to be a sinkhole of time, money, and you won't see an end to that tunnel, and it'll just feel like a waste, right? As you go up in the organization. So, okay. Um,
Really.
yeah, that's interesting. Like my mind is like spinning on some of these things. So you're a specialist in this area. Now I've dabbled, in and out. Like I mentioned, the DLP side. So I run away from like the data classification as much as I can, or I'm gonna phone a friend and I'm just gonna call you, say, "Hey, I've got this client. Heather, come on in here." Um, so yeah, it's really interesting. I love that part of the conversation. I want to shift back to AI just a little bit, and well, identity and AI because I think these are going to be two interesting topics. Um, an AI agent these days, right? It's really that is an identity with credentials. Who's provisioning those, and against what standard? Is there a standard for agent access and identity? What does that look like to you?
So we're calling them non-human identities,
Okay.
which also sort of relates back to service accounts if we sort of
Yep.
tie those together from old and new terminologies. Who's provisioning them?
Did you just call me old? Because that's what I would have called it, a service account. I'm just kidding.
Well, you and I both the same because when I think of non-human identities, I think of the service account that used to run the web server that I was in charge of. So anyhow,
Exactly.
uh, uh, I, I think that answer varies. As Copilot and ChatGPT gets leveraged in your environment, typically those are thoughtful, thought out identities that are being added.
Yeah.
But if we think of any tool software that we've updated in probably the last 6 months, there's an AI identity in those tools. Adobe, uh,
Yep.
all of your meeting note takers, Grammarly. There are so many that have access that was granted access without the understanding of what that grant meant.
Mhm. Just kind of like an update in the background, and all of a sudden you have this unmanaged, would you call it a non-human identity? Is that what you call it? Non-human
Yeah.
identity?
Non-human
Um,
identity.
and then it's just sitting in your environment, completely unmanaged. So,
Uh,
um, I love that part. The agent identity, non-human identity is definitely a problem. I see that everywhere right now. Um,
Yeah.
and that's going to take us to AI governance. I'm assuming at some point. Um, so in terms of I guess access governance, right, and classification, sometimes I see those as two separate programs. Do people in your experience normally treat them as separate programs, and should they be the same or should they be separate? Does that depend on the size of the organization? What does that look like?
I think when you talk about AI access, it crosses the boundaries of a lot of various different organizations. So, an identity from a user base might be a human resources and a help desk IT function. But an identity with AI could be a compliance, risk, cybersecurity, help desk, IT,
Mm,
business, sales. It really crosses most of the business lines and level of concern.
yeah,
And I think that's really where the change advisory board comes in to add another key pillar to what we're doing here. That when you do turn on Copilot,
yeah.
that needs to be a discussion. And if you're going to enable Copilot, I would enable it in baby steps, crawl, walk, run.
Mhm. Okay. Um, Let me see, what question? Oh, you know what? What's more worse in your opinion? Is it not knowing what data you have or not knowing who can reach it? You have to pick one.
If I were to choose between not knowing what data you can have and who can reach it, I think the problem is probably not knowing what data you have.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Um,
Okay.
and the reason being, I have an example. So, um, we go through, we scan your entire environment, and you're like, okay, I've got this, I got that, I got that. Most of those things are, you know, everyday business things that you can expect, a client can expect to be in their environment. Until they discover the user that has stored all of their Audible and digital books in their OneDrive.
Oof. I've seen
And
that.
that user also wanted to make sure that those books didn't go anywhere, so they created an AWS storage area and stored them there. That's all fine and dandy. You know who's going to care a lot about that? The CIO, the
Mhm.
CTO, that is paying for the terabytes of storage for personal use.
Yeah.
So not
Did
only, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so, and when you say, like, paying for that, do you think people maybe are trying to spend their way out of that because storage is so cheap these days, or is that an oversimplification or not a thing an organization should do? Because I've heard people say that, "Just buy more storage, it doesn't matter."
I think that when you have moved all of your resources to the cloud, every dollar matters.
Mhm.
And if you're paying $10 a month for someone to store their terabytes of data and your bill is $200, that $10 might matter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 5%, yeah, I mean, yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that comes down to your acceptable use policies, which are mentioned in the book, um, your security awareness training, because what if one of those books was not legitimate and it was actually malware?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, they download one of those, backdoored PDFs, ebooks. I see that all the time. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
okay. Um Okay, so I'm going to shift over to the buying seat, so to speak, right? Um, where where do you see the largest spend happening on, data classification or AI governance projects? Where do you see the biggest spend happening right now? And if you were looking at your crystal ball, where do you see it changing in the future, skewing more towards something else? What do you think there?
I think the biggest spend right now is DSPM.
Okay.
Um, and it's because organizations really don't know what they have. Think of a 30-year organization that has been in business and storing data, and
Hmm.
then they took all of their on-prem servers and resources and moved them to the cloud. Um, a lot of times we're finding that they've moved data that was sensitive, they've moved data that didn't matter, they've moved all kinds of various different things to an environment that now they don't control the physical infrastructure of. Um, Additionally, there are environments that are used for different functions that is very hard to classify the data that's stored inside of them. For example, Atlassian, Jira,
Hmm.
Confluence, Salesforce. How do you find the data that exists in those? I know the answer, but I'm curious. How do you think that you find the data in Jira and Confluence?
I mean, you would think it's some kinda central database that maybe you can plug into or search, but I'm guessing how you phrase that question, that's not the answer. Uh-oh.
Um,
What am I
th-
about to learn?
they do offer up really great, cool technologies to help you search for things, but you
Yeah.
have to know what you're searching for.
Oh, so there's
Uh,
not just like the pool of your data that you can just
you
analyze?
can't visualize it. You can't analyze it. You can't see what attachments were uploaded. You can't scroll through the list of attachments. You have to search for them.
Oh, wow. That kind of defeats the purpose of data in that case, right?
Yeah.
That
So
would seem to be pointless to me.
it becomes a bigger problem because
Yeah.
not only do the businesses not own access to the data to those environments anymore because they've been moved to the cloud, they have to ask permission to connect to those environments. They also can't move the data to a place where they can use it and make it usable. So when you've got a help desk, service desk that's been running on Jira for 10 years, what has been stored there?
Yeah.
It I have a client that has gone through this, and it is near impossible to find what is in those environments.
Oh,
And
wow.
I have challenged the DSPM vendors to find and connect and be usable in those environments.
Yeah.
So, it's not just me standing there listening to the clients cry for outrage. I've been trying to like really get the vendors to understand where their tools are key because there's no visibility. I mean, somebody could screen through a file store. You could launch a DLP network discovery and find the data that exists in a file store. But how
Sure.
do you do that in an environment that you have no control of, you can't see, you can't touch, and the only way to get to it is through an interface? Salesforce is the same thing.
Mm. Well, oof, my brain's spinning now because now, um, third party, like supply chain risk, all of that all plays into that same thing, which we're seeing a lot of those attacks now, right?
Mhm.
So that's
There just an Atlassian attack on Jira and Confluence. I think I'm not gonna say who I think the vendor was, the client was, but, it's been in the news, and it's a real problem. So the DSPM vendors have been made aware and challenged to fix the problem, and they are working on fixing the problem.
okay. All right. No, listen, I love the conversation. I suspect you and I are going to have more of these. It's 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 an area you're clearly experienced in. You're the expert in. I can't wait to pick your brain on this further, and I'm sure
Yep.
we'll briefly talk about it at Black Hat. So, um, all right, so we'll end the episode with I always ask my guests, you have to pick a side, whether that's the board, that's the CXO level, that is a director level, whatever that looks like, and you have to choose the side and what's the one thing you wish that side of that conversation understood, and you can only choose one side, and what's the one thing you want them to understand.
I'm gonna go with the C-suite
Okay.
because, I feel like they're sort of the man in the middle, riding the fence, so to speak. Um, and the C-suite, I think they need to understand that up and down, they need to be able to communicate in both directions about data security. Using the big words with the board might land with a couple, but really getting down and framing it as business risk for the board is important.
Yeah.
And as you're talking to your employees, talking to them technically so that they understand why we're doing this, the technologies that we're using to do this, understand the vendor landscape. That's important. Additionally, the users. The CISO is a sweet spot for helping the users get the knowledge that they need to help be part of the defending force against AI.
Yeah. All right. I loved it. I love it. That's great. So, hey, really wanted to thank you for joining. I'm really happy we got connected. I love the conversation. Can't wait to see you next week. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So, anything you wanna close out with?
So obviously, buy the book. Love to get your thoughts on it. and let's defeat the army together by starving AI.
I love it. I love it. All right. Thanks so much, Heather.
Thanks, Jason. We'll talk
Yep.
soon.